The following program is a presentation of BaseNet Internet Television, bringing you topics in the way mainstream media won't. BaseNet Internet Television presents As We See It, with Fred Boaz and friends. In Los Angeles, I'm Gene White. And now, to our studios in Boston.
Thank you, Gene, and welcome to show number 26 of As We See It, being recorded on Sunday, January 15th, 2012. I'm Ed Jupin in Boston, Massachusetts. Joining us right now will be Larry the Lobster Marks in Brookline, right here in Massachusetts, Fred Boaz out there in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania, and Holly Hurley in St. Louis. Afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So we're going to try something new this week. We're going to start off with some fun facts. And leading out our fun facts segment this week is going to be Larry's fun facts. And this week Larry's got a very specific themed fun facts for us, all about some criminal activity. Larry, take it away.
The first one is man arrested for throwing out bag of marijuana at courthouse. Winter Haven, Florida police arrested a 31-year-old man after he threw away a bag containing more than 30 grams of marijuana at a courthouse.
That's just stupid.
It is, but it happens. You know, it's happened several times.
I see goofy things like that all the time on, these world's craziest criminals and everything on True TV. They're always showing stuff like that.
Well, if this was Boston, it would be no problem, right? I mean, he threw it away. He's not in possession of it anymore.
Well, there was another really stupid thing that just happened here in Boston along Brookline Avenue near Fenway Park. They were chasing someone for speeding or for some other moving violation. They're throwing bags of drugs out the window of the car.
Yeah, we're not going to see that as we chase him down the road. What's on the bag here? Does the cops pick him up as they're driving by? That's evidence chain for you.
Well, actually, they called for backup to, pick up the drugs that were thrown out the window.
What, do they really think they're not going to charge a possession for that? Come on.
Well, but what's interesting now, in Boston, they passed the law while I was still living there, Ed, where it's actually legal. Pretty much everything concerning marijuana is legal as long as you don't get caught with it on you. And if you do get caught with it on you, now mind you, they threw it out the window, so it's not on them. But if you do get caught with it on you, it's like a fine, like a parking ticket.
It's a summary offense now.
Yeah, so big freaking deal. Why even bother throwing out your pot? Just don't pay the ticket. That's what most people do.
Yeah, but if you kind of warrant out on them, trying to get away with it that way too. You don't have the background story behind it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But as long as if it were just the pot, I think it'd be a very different story. I think the reason they're trying to catch these guys so hard is obviously they have other offenses, or possibly even other kinds of drugs.
Like that, they want to get them for littering too. Felony littering.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. So what else you got for us, Larry?
Okay, number 2 is vandals wanted by police posted videos of themselves. Vandals who spray-painted cars and walls and smashed car windows gave police an invaluable lead.
They're not going to figure out who we are.
This is like BTK. I feel like certain kinds of killers, or certain kinds of criminals, have this need to, show off what they did. If you're going to do something that's against the law, don't, eventually, over time, you may get away with posting stuff for a certain amount of time. A lot of these people think they're smarter than the police. But at a certain point, the jig is going to be up. You're going to get caught.
Well, somebody should probably, and I'm sure somebody knew him and said, hey, that's John. John lives next door. Hey, wow. And my uncle's the cop. I tell you, I saw John next door on TV, man.
Yeah, right?
Tell all their friends. And
yeah, what do you think your friends are so loyal they're not going to collect a reward on you? Forget about it.
Especially when that was your friend's car?
Yeah. So Larry, tell us about the story from Utica. Isn't that upstate New York?
Utica, New York.
Utica, New York cop caught on dashboard camera allegedly planting evidence. We all hear lots of stories about mind-numbingly stupid criminals, but what about mind-numbingly stupid cops?
Yeah, that's just dumb.
Forgets he has his dash cam on.
Also, though, no, go ahead, Fred.
That's just mind-boggling. You know, not like he didn't know the dash cam was on.
You know what? I think this is kind of like, Fred, what you and Ed were saying about guns the other week. Anybody who's ever used a camera, you know that you don't do anything if there's a camera anywhere in the room until you're sure that thing is off. I mean, maybe this is the camera personality's gun law, you know? Like you said, you treat a gun like it's loaded, whether you know it's loaded or not.
Yeah, and you treat a camera like it's turned on.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, it's not like he couldn't figure out the range of the camera. Listen, I pulled over Speedo last week, and he was, what do you think, he wasn't going to get caught?
Oh, that's ridiculous. So ridiculous. And, of course, you know, Larry, you've got one for us that happened over the holidays, it sounds like.
Yep, this is the last one, number 4. It's hi-ho, it's off to jail we go. A homeowner spent the festive season behind bars after he turned his favorite pot plant into a Christmas tree, complete with Christmas decorations.
And where did this happen, Larry? Do we know?
It didn't say where it happened.
Well, because again, you know, in Boston, this would just be an expensive mistake, not necessarily a crime.
That's just too much, man.
And what did you say, Larry? He spent Festivus in jail?
Festive season behind bars.
Yeah, but officer, that's my Festivus tree.
That's the Festivus for the rest of us, for sure.
That's my Festivus bush.
So that's a little different. We had some little fun facts this week instead of our little-known facts.
Oh, man. Well, you know.
Stupid people in this world. They're just so stupid.
Yes, and on a less stupid people-related note, I understand you have some a quirky fun fact for us as well there, Fred.
There are going to be 3 Friday the 13th this year. One is already passed, obviously. And they're going to be, the next 2 are going to be in April and July. And those Friday the 13th are actually 13 weeks apart. You know, it happens every, 3 Friday the 13th happens every few years. The last one was in 2009. Next will be in 2015. What's special about 2012, that won't get until 2040, is that there is that it happens during a leap year. That was talked about by a gentleman by the name of Tom Feisner, a University of Delaware math professor who sometimes goes by the name of Dr. 13. It's hard not to feel something about Friday the 13th. I find 95% of the people in the world are superstitious about it, and that 5% are liars. The number 13.
To me like he's really trying to justify his nickname.
But there's also a lot of history behind it. Friday the 13th and number 13 and Friday are recurring precedents in mythological, spiritual, and religious tradition. In Christianity, 13 people attended the Last Supper before Judas' betrayal and Jesus' death on a Friday. Myth warns of dire consequences for dining in groups of 13. Friday the 13th is also a date the medieval Knights Templar were imprisoned. And there's a lot of stuff about this. Rap singer, not historic, rap singer Tupac Shakur died on Friday, September 13th, 1996. It's being gunned down on September 7th.
Or did he?
And for many pagans, 13 is a lucky number because it corresponds with the number of full moon each year. And it says Dr. Ivo Dominguez Jr., owner of Bell Book and Candle, a pagan and occult bookstore in Dover, Delaware. So it's pretty cool.
You know what's interesting to me about this story is that here you have this mathematician who is at the University of Delaware, and most mathematicians are kind of boring guys, but this guy decided he was going to have a thing. His thing was going to be 13, the number 13, and he was going to be obsessed with 13. I find that fascinating. I mean, at least he's a quirky, creative mathematician, not just your kind of stereotypical inside of the box numbers guy.
I found the article interesting, especially the fact that people seem to relate Friday the 13th to bad luck because of what's happened in history. And a lot of people don't know where the actual Friday the 13th came from, and the fact that it can be tied to certain significant parts of history. I find fascinating a lot of ways.
And I don't know for a fact that I've ever had specific bad luck on a Friday the 13th, or even know anybody that's had specifically bad luck on a Friday the 13th.
don't know, maybe call me a pagan or whatever, but I think Friday the 13th, I think, 13, so far it's kind of a fun day, fun time, fun. I mean, it's a fun fact. It's a neat thing. We learned a lot about Fibonacci's number when I was doing some history in college, and there have always been certain numbers that are connected to certain things, but I think that's because of the cyclical nature of the planet, Like, that's just the way things are going to happen. When you go around in a circle and you have the same 4 seasons every year, and you have the same, the same cycle around the sun, there are going to be numbers that correlate with that, and I just think it's fascinating. Kind of cool in both a scientific way and also a superstitious way. Just interesting, really. Well, something a little bit more cut and dried here, and this is just a good fact to know. Running for the United States this year is going to be Meb Keflezighi. I never pronounce that right, although he is one of my favorite runners. Those of you who like to follow marathons, Meb won the New York City Marathon very famously a couple of years ago after having some serious problems with his legs. Coming in second place, U.S. favorite Ryan Hall. People love Ryan Hall. He has a long-standing competition with a guy by the name of Dathan, who came in, I believe, fifth, if I'm not mistaken. And then third this year for the men's was a gentleman by the name of Abdirahman, and he's a 3-time Olympian. And for the women, I was actually really excited about the women's results. Shalane, who I actually follow on Twitter, Shalane Flanagan, won the title with 2 hours, 25 minutes. That is super fast. Just to give you an idea, when I ran the marathon that BaseNet covered, I ran in 4 hours, 15 minutes. So she is almost 2 hours faster than me.
Larry could do it in 2 hours and 5 minutes, can't you, Larry?
Is she going to be one of your guests on the Crash and Glass podcast?
Oh man, you know what? I'll tweet her and see if I can get her to come on Crash and Glass. Second and third behind her was Desiree Davila and Kara Goucher, who's also famous, been on the cover of Runner's Magazine a couple times, and she finished. She got bronze in 2007. So good luck, ladies. Good luck, gentlemen, and way to run a marathon real fast. 2 hours and 25 minutes. You can't even watch a movie in 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Put it this way: that's 4 days faster than me.
Yeah.
And they're all about 26.2, correct? That's the average, or there's a specific length that they are?
Length? Oh, marathons, all marathons are 26.2 miles. A marathon's 26.2, half marathon 13.1, 10K is give or take about 6.1 miles, and then you go to a 5K, which is a really common race for people starting out, and that's about 3.1 miles.
Yeah, so I agree with Fred. That's about 4 days for me.
Yeah, the only way I'm doing that in under 2 hours is in a car.
So let's move on to a little bit of media news, I guess, if you guys are ready. Buckled in, ready to go. So Fred and I actually had a similar reaction to this. I hear the sighs of shock across the As We See It Nation. Right. Terry Crews is back to do some more Old Spice ads with Tim and Eric from Adult Swim's Tim and Eric Awesome Show, Great Job. And essentially, this is going to be, they bought ad space for the Super Bowl, and in the ads, it's going to be ads for other products by their parent company. The parent company of Old Spice, I believe, is Procter & Gamble. Let me make sure about that real quick. There we go. But the current...
I think they did sell out to them.
Yes. So then, yes, it is Procter & Gamble is their parent company. And they have other brands like Bounce and Charmin. And what they're doing is, for the Super Bowl, they're going to have Terry Crews just like bombard these other commercials for their other products, their other Procter & Gamble products, and basically say that the Old Spice smell is power, and it gives him so much power he can bust into other people's ad campaigns. What do you guys think? Effective, ineffective, good idea, bad idea?
I think it's a good idea. I just hate the commercial they're using.
They did well the first time around. I believe the original Old Spice ads with him initially started during the Super Bowl as well, and they were highly successful, and he made a name for himself. He was on all of the late-night talk shows and everything, and done it over and over in parodies and everything.
Well, that actually wasn't Terry Crews. That was a different guy. Let me look his name up.
Oh, was it a different guy?
He was an ex-NFL player, actually. Terry Crews I love because he's an MMA guy. He's a fighter. He's in a lot of action movies.
Oh, okay. So this isn't the same guy they used the last time around?
No, this is a different guy. Well, they have used him in 2010, but it was a different ad campaign you're thinking of the guy who did the I'm on a Horse, right?
I don't know what I'm thinking of. I'm just thinking of the Old Spice commercials.
Yes. He's the guy who did the one where basically it was all one solid shot and things kept getting ripped away and putting under him. And his name is Isaiah Mustafa.
Okay.
Yeah, so Isaiah Mustafa got famous and it was a similar ad campaign. They ran around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They were both very innovative and very new. My issue with this ad campaign, I don't know those of you out there who've watched Tim and Eric Awesome Show, great job. Probably a little bit below the demographic for this show. I don't find them funny. That's my problem. I love Terry Crews. I love what Old Spice is doing to innovate. I like they're trying to reach a new generation, but I think this is a big chance to take on a Super Bowl ad because these guys, for all intents and purposes, have a niche audience. They are not mainstream comedy. I just think it's a huge risk.
And you may be right because the niche of the people that are using a lot of your product, they're trying to get new users. And a lot of the people that are using it now are already established people. I use Old Spice. A lot of people that I know use Old Spice that are in their 50s. If I don't like the commercial, I may find something else to use if I find it stupid or insulting. And like you said, a lot of this humor out there isn't funny, at least not to me. And I'm a consumer, but the worst part about it is when you see anybody's ad, be it Old Spice or anybody, the stupider the ad, the better you remember it. But you got to remember that grown people are getting paid for this stuff. They get paid a lot of money for this stuff. Young and Rubicon, a lot of these companies that are out there that are promoting as advertising make a lot of money on these ads because they bring in a lot of money. And years ago they had characters you can follow. They had Danny, the guy for Honda, and when they took him off, people got pissed off and called the Honda people. Now they got this girl for Progressive Insurance that she may be annoying, but people remember who she is. So it does work sometimes.
And I realize that companies like Old Spice need to reach out and lower their demographics because a product like Old Spice specifically is for the 50 and above crowd. So, eventually they have to start lowering their numbers so that they could bring in a whole new audience. Not to say that it can't happen. It certainly has. They've been around for a long time, and they've gone after generation. But typically in this day and age, in my other life, I work with a lot of high school age boys and girls. And all of these high school age boys seem to wear Axe, A-X-E. I don't care how many of these Old Spice commercials they see. I don't know that they're going to run out tomorrow and buy Old Spice. It's just the thing to do is to use Axe.
It's not trendy, and that's the whole thing. I got Axe in my house too, and I have the Old Spice. And that's because this is what has been decided that it's trendy. This is what's been decided through whatever the situation is. That this is what the kids want. It's not cool. Like you said, it's not cool if you're not using Axe. So Axe becomes the one for the kids. And I mean, a guy my age buying Axe, people laugh at you. So
I agree. I think that it would be hilarious if a guy your age bought Axe. But more importantly, that first Old Spice ad campaign, I think the Terry Crews one was relatively successful. Obviously good for Terry Crews, but the Isaiah Mustafa ones were so successful. I question why they abandoned him because he's fantastic in interviews. As you said, he was on the late night talk shows. He was on Ellen.
Money.
He's
money,
young.
money.
Yeah, but he doesn't cost as much as Terry Crews. Terry Crews is super famous in some circles.
It's a big name, yeah.
Yeah, and Isaiah Mustafa was the Old Spice guy, and God bless Terry Crews because he looks fantastic, but he's in his late 40s. He's appealing to guys like you, not to the Isaiah Mustafa
and
crowd.
that's the Old Spice crowd.
Yeah, but the Isaiah Mustafa crowd, I think, generated some awareness among younger guys. I know my husband started using their deodorant after.
It did. I believe their numbers went up. I remember that there was an insurge for Old Spice products because of his ads.
So from what's good for men to what's good for women, as far as I'm concerned, obviously this is going to be a great opportunity to tell any of you women out there listening that we have a new Crashing Glass podcast coming this week, and you can listen to our very first podcast from last week up on the BaseNet TV site, basenettv.com. And this story I love, actually. I absolutely love, and you guys have to tell me what you think about this, but Disney's villainous film, Disney is going to start a villainous tagline. Like they have the princesses, they're going to do a villainous sequence.
Oh, for the bad girls.
Yeah, films for the bad girls. I am loving this. They're starting with Maleficent, which, if you've never seen I believe it's 1950s movie, Sleeping Beauty,
Yeah,
1950.
53 or something.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was 53. But they've been looking. Aronofsky is looking at directing it. Tim Burton, Guillermo del Toro. I mean, some of the biggest names in directing are interested in doing these. And let me tell you, as a girl who grew up with the Disney princess generation, I have to say, Maleficent is one scary biatch. I can think of nobody better for them to start with. She is creepy, and I am so curious about this series. What do you guys think?
I think it's a great idea. I think that Disney needs to get away from the touchy-feely, the goody two-shoes image they had. And, I mean, it needs to start getting into things that you know. If you go with the old fairy tale stories that we had, they need to go more for the witch rather than Hansel and Gretel. Go more with the wolf than the three little pigs. You know, show both sides of the story because there are both sides of it, and this character is going to be huge because kids are going to love this. I'm telling you, they are going to make a mint with this.
Well, and you know what I think is interesting about it? I mean, like, I love the touchy-feely Disney. Don't get me wrong. And I think there will always be, if they can at least move with the times as far as technology is concerned, I think there'll always be a place for the Finding Nemos of the world, you know?
Yeah, well, and because they own Pixar, they will.
Exactly. But what excites me about this is, like, Fred, I think you're right. I think, growing up, I was not an ingenue. I was a little bit weird. I was a little bit different. I was awkward.
No, not you.
I know, right? Shocking. But I think girls who don't fit in or girls who are a little bit different. I gotta say, obviously, I feel very strongly about women having their own personality and having their own outlets, and I think that adding the villainess will give them somebody different to look at, whether it's to look at in terms of here are the consequences of bad actions, or whether it's to look at in terms of, wow, I'm a lot more like Maleficent than I am Sleeping Beauty.
Yep.
I think girls need someone they can relate to.
Part of the problem is that through companies like Disney, through no fault of their own, a lot of the girls have thought that they had to be the princess. They had to try and be that. What about the girl that's the tomboy growing up? The one that may not want to wear the dress. Like my wife her favorite section is Sears, the tool section. She loves her tools. She wears jeans. The only time I ever saw her wearing a dress was the day we got married 17 years ago. She wears jeans and boots, and she's very much a tomboy. And a character like this, or a tomboy type character, is huge because now you have a character that the non-princess girls, for lack of a better term, can now relate to, and it's going to be huge. Because it shows that this is also a normal way of life. Because people say, well, I always used to put tomboys down. Well, why are you putting that girl down? That's a normal reaction to life. Because my wife can change her own tires. She can do an oil change on her car. She can do her own spark plugs. Now, because she chooses not to, that's different. But she can do it, and she has no problem picking up a tool and putting up a wall in the house, or picking up a hammer and doing carpentry work. It's part of what you do, and it makes you more full around the person. Rather than the person's got to go back and say, oh, I can't do this and I'll break my nails. Well, something tough.
Yeah, I like the idea of it being tough. I like the idea of it being different because, hey, maybe they haven't yet come out with a great, like you said, a great tomboy, real heroine that you can get behind. But I think, some of us we're, as human beings, we are complex. And, like you said, your wife who doesn't, like to wear dresses, that makes her different. And some girls are afraid to embrace the part of them that's a little bit evil. And we talk about this a lot on Crashing Glasses, that, women are afraid to be contrary. We're afraid to argue. We always say, I'm sorry. And we haven't gotten past that yet as a culture. This is something there's been extensive amounts of scientific research on. And I feel like allowing women to be the bad guy in a really palatable and exonerable kind of way, a complex bad guy. There have been complex male bad guys in film forever. Let's give some depth to those female bad guys and take away that, like I called her a biatch. Let's take that away and add some complexity. Let's make her something more than just a villainess who's lonely and angry,
I would love to see a villain, like you talk about, like the villain that we see on TV. I'd like to see, we have Batman, we have Catwoman. Well, why not expand that character or it'll make a female nemesis to a guy that he doesn't catch, and we run it from week to week on a series. I mean, it'd be a great idea.
Well, where is the Irene Adler of modern fiction? Sherlock Holmes had the one person he could never catch. It ended up being two by the end of the series, and she was a woman, Irene Adler. Now, in the movies, they made her a love interest. It wasn't so in the book. She was just a baddie that couldn't be caught. Sherlock Holmes genuinely admitted being outwitted by a woman.
And there were two people that outwitted him. One was a man, one was a woman, and it drove him crazy. And Irene Adler that she couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah, where are the Irene Adlers of modern fiction? I hope that this.
But you also don't see that character brought out in the Sherlock Holmes movies or the television movies that we had from the 1930s with Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce either. It's always him going either after the male criminal or Professor Moriarty, and those are the only ones you really ever see. You don't hear, except by reading the book and the series, you don't hear about Irene Adler at all.
Yeah, no, it's pretty upsetting. I was really upset, I know, when I started reading the series to find that out, actually, how big a part she played in his becoming who he was, and how small a part she's played in the fiction sense. And everybody wants to make her a love interest, and it's not necessary.
She was. I think I read a biography that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote her as a nemesis, but also a love interest at the same time. Yeah. That they had the respect for each other because Holmes was in love with her, she was in love with Holmes, but they couldn't admit that. And the whole real complex characters. I think it's great.
Yes, I love that. I really do. And, speaking of complexity, people are people around the world, and you would think that things would work in any situation. Excuse me, actually, I'm skipping one story to go to another. Boop, back it up. So the White House actually passed a law that's been a long time coming, and within myself, I have some conflicting feelings about this law. We have a clip to explain it. Now, I have to apologize for our longtime listeners. This is about the new anti-piracy legislation, and it is a lengthy clip, but it is very in-depth and will really explain the issue. So let's go ahead and go to that clip now.
The past few weeks have actually been the culmination of over a year's worth of discussions, meetings, and negotiations between content owners, congressional staffers, technology companies, and DC-based public interest groups like PK. To understand the real story, you need to go back to the summer of 2010. Usher and will.i.am ruled the charts, and in May, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, in coordination with the MPAA and RIAA, confiscated domain names from 9 movie, music, and software websites, accusing them of being havens for copyright infringement. The next month, in September, Senator Leahy introduced the Combating Online Infringement and Counterfeits Act, known as COICA, in the United States Senate. COICA was designed to go after so-called rogue websites. However, it was overly broad, lacked key due process protections, and disrupted key technical underpinnings of the Internet. By the end of the year, COICA was functionally dead. However, coming into this year, the Senate continued to consider introducing similar legislation. In May, Senator Leahy, the senator who introduced COICA, introduced the Preventing Real Online Threats to Economic Creativity and Theft of Intellectual Property Act, otherwise known as PIPA. Although the name changed, PIPA managed to retain many of the problems from COICA, but at the end of October, SOPA was officially introduced in the House. SOPA actually managed to take PIPA and make it worse. On October 26th, the House announced a hearing on SOPA. On November 16th, the hearing was held. During the hearing, opponents of SOPA pointed to letters of opposition from one of the broadest, most diverse coalition of opposition ever assembled on an issue before Congress, expressing deep reservations about the impact of SOPA.
How the bill would undermine security and stability of the Internet, a white paper by 5 leading DNS engineers and Internet security experts, a letter from the Anti-Phishing Working Group.
At the same time, Congress was receiving tens of thousands of calls, emails, and letters from the public demanding that SOPA be stopped. By the end of the week, an ideologically diverse collection of representatives including Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, Libertarian champion and Republican presidential hopeful Ron Paul, and the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee Chairman Darrell Issa came out against the bill. On December 8th, a bipartisan group of lawmakers, including Democratic Senator Ron Wyden and Republican Representative Darrell Issa, introduced the Online Protection and Enforcement of Digital Trade, or otherwise known as the OPEN Act, as an alternative to SOPA and PIPA.
So I have to say, I was kind of surprised that President Obama was the one to pass SOPA.
I don't know. Did they actually pass it, or it's still going through legislation?
Well, that my understanding was that this actually. Let me. Maybe you guys know something I don't. I had read on Twitter and such that the it was either this or the Protect IP Act that was
I think it was
passed over.
PIPA.
Yeah, that was passed over like last weekend or something. Like they actually put it to a vote because they knew that the public opposition would be so strong.
I don't have I don't have a problem with SOPA in and of itself. I have problems with portions of it, but in general, what annoys me is that people don't think that that piracy, especially part of the entertainment industry, stealing movies, things like that, that's stealing, and it is. I mean, Ed can attest to the fact that he had a kid that worked with him in one of his jobs in his other life, as he puts it. Kid walked in. We were going to see. We were talking about the movie Castaway, I believe, with Tom Hanks, and this kid had a copy that his mother had obtained overseas illegally, given him, and he had a copy. He had seen the movie before it came out in the U.S. theater. He had no problem with that when she paid $5 for the film, and I have a problem with it because that's taking away. It's stealing. When you go into a theater and you record something or you pirate something like that, that's stealing. You're taking money out of people's pockets. You wonder why films cost $200 million to make. This is one of the reasons.
Well, and the Motion Picture Association of America is saying, like, this is to protect American jobs and all this sort of stuff. And they've been trying to get something like this, even put to Congress. You guys are right. They presented that they haven't actually passed it all the way, although they are now. The Republicans in the House have already agreed that they're going to try to push this thing through. But the interesting thing about this bill is the Motion Picture Association and people like that have been trying to pass this for a very long time. Because, you guys remember, like, late 90s, early 2000s, even Metallica, was saying stealing our music and all this sort of stuff. But I think the problem with this bill is if you're like me and you believe in people's freedoms and their privacy, it seems a little close. People have basically said it's one step away from the Patriot Act on that side. And then Republicans are actually saying in Congress they don't think it has enough teeth to actually do anything. So it feels like there's no happy balance where regulating the Internet's concerned. Do you have some thoughts on this, actually? Because
I just want to clarify. The president has said he will not sign the bill.
Really?
The White House is not behind it. My thoughts are that, yes, I'm all for stopping piracy, but I'm not a fan or a supporter of the Patriot Act. I think in any of these you need to find a middle ground somehow. Going along with SOPA and PIPA, you want to stop all of this free-for-all with these free movies available online, but yet you don't want to create another Patriot Act type situation, in my opinion. It's tough, and that's why this is so controversial. You will hear on tech sites pros and cons. You're going to hear an equal amount of people that are for this as that are against it. I know a lot about it, and we could do a whole show on just this. However, it is very controversial. It's not something that's going to pass soon, and like I said, and now the White House is not behind it.
Well, I think this is interesting because the going word. I'm glad to hear actually that the White House isn't behind it. I know some of Obama's advisors said that they didn't like it, but I hadn't heard. A lot of people actually were under the impression that he was behind it, and that was very shocking to Barack Obama supporters. What I find really interesting, and we're going to talk about, we have a second sort of foreign technology policy as it applies to the U.S. Story after this one. A big part of SOPA is to block access to foreign sites that are offering material that violates our copyright laws. And I don't know if any of you guys have international friends, you know that in every other country, almost at least a large portion of Pan-Asian countries as well as Russian, and in that general vicinity have sites where you can watch movies streaming for free all the time. And most, techie people know how to get onto those sites. But the interesting thing is, is sort of in other countries, they have all of these movies online for free. Here, we're trying to block access to those sites. But, I mean, it's kind of like you said it. I don't really understand how you can it seems to me like the Internet is so vast and the world is so small. It would be very difficult to block the right material without how would you really be able to pick and choose?
There's no way to do that unless you're going into people's computers to see what they're downloading and blocking certain sites nationally. And I don't like that idea either. I mean, I like the idea of ensuring that someone can't steal someone else's material. I like the idea of not being able to download a movie prior to its being released in the United States, let's say a movie that's released in Europe off of a European site. I like the idea of having that, let's say having it released here before it's available free. What I don't like is walking through the streets of Sydney, New York, or Boston and being able to see a copy of a film for $5 that you pay $14 for that I can get on the internet. And have it being released before the film's actually out on the streets. I mean, I'm not happy about that. I want to see the people get paid for the product that they own, intellectual property. But I don't want to see, like Ed said, going into the Patriot Act where you can start looking at people's computers to see what they're downloading.
Well,
That's
and the
dangerous.
problem, and what's really dangerous about it, Fred, is that internationally, that we always walk a very fine line as Americans because we put out this beacon of we're the free country. Don't you want to be free like we're free? And what a lot of these other countries are saying is you guys aren't free. You have all this legislation blocking stuff that we have access to. How could you possibly think you're free? And there is a very fine line that you walk, and there is, I feel, very little way to legislate this. And I feel like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, companies who have tried to make it profitable for people to put movies online very quickly, which most people don't mind paying for stuff that they want to watch, as long as it's commensurate with the material you're actually receiving. And I think the problem a lot of tech people have is that movie companies are not working with these websites. They don't want to move to the future because they have a strong relationship with the cable companies that are in between. And they're slowing down the progress of this. They've tried multiple times to shut Netflix down. And so they're sort of shooting themselves in the foot because people are going to try to find a way to get these things available at home, just like all of their media is available at home. And if you don't let them pay for it, they're going to go elsewhere for it.
Well, Ed and I had talked a couple months back, or at least several years, about the fact that there's music that I've had on every venue available. I've had it on album. I've had it on cassette. I've had it on 8-track. Remember the Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we had 8-track. And if I go and I download that song, that artist or that movie record company has been paid for that numerous times already. Now, if my son loves to download something, then you can't say that about the same thing. If he's 19 and the group came out last week, but if I download Hotel California from Eagles, I've had that 12 or 14 times paid for, so I should be able to download that for free.
No, I agree, but that's what I think is so beautiful about digital markets is that, I believe, like once you own a DVD, you can give it to a friend and say, here, I want you to watch this movie. It's the same thing with books. That's what we did with books for centuries. Books are just now going away. They've been around since people could write. And what you do is you say, I've read this, here, take it. And with a digital file, you should have that ownership. Once I own, let's say, I get so frustrated because I have my Kindle Fire and I downloaded the last Harry Potter film from Amazon, of course, because you guys know I'm a huge nerd. And I downloaded it under one name. And then since I got into school, I have a different web account now for Amazon because students get 6 months free. And I wanted to take advantage of that. So I can't watch the Harry Potter movie that I paid for under one name on my Kindle Fire because it's now registered under my school name.
Well, and that all started with Apple and Digital Rights Management, their DRM. Yes. So you could all thank Apple for starting that snowball.
Well, yes, Apple got legislation brought down on them because of that, and that's why you can now use your MP3 files from Apple on several different platforms.
Yeah, DRM is finished now.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah, DRM's a thing of the past now.
See, the idea, is you can still, and nobody said anything about giving something to anyone. It's when you make money off of it that they go after you. A lot of
you can't even give it away. E-books, for instance, other than in a very few circumstances, Holly cannot lend me one of her e-books.
Really?
Oh yeah, you can't do it.
Oh, I use real books.
Yeah, there's still DRM. You can't do it.
And that's an issue that I have because one of the ways that for me, really popular series have been spread is someone gave me the book. And even with MP3s now, because MP3s are, they have removed some of the illegal material, some of the monopolistic materials that people put on those. you can share them. And then when people share MP3s with me and I like them, I always go download the album and pay for it. And I think people understand how other people make money, but you have to give them a way to work within the framework that is within their free rights. And I know that it's dicey, and as a business person, it scares me because, yeah, it's harder to regulate, but you have to make that effort, because if you don't, people will find ways to pirate things. It has been, as long as man has had a history, people have found a way to get the basic rights and freedoms that are allowed to them, and it's going to happen. I think this is really important, and I think people who do what we do are certainly interested in it. Anybody who works in an online format. And especially, I know for me, because, I was a musician, I worked in that arena for a very long time. I think this is important for artists.
And that's why I said you need to, going back to what I said initially, you need to stop the piracy, but yet you don't want another Patriot Act. So you have to find that middle ground somehow.
Absolutely.
And that's going to be very difficult to do.
Yeah, and speaking of things in other countries that connects to us, France has a new cell phone company called free.fr. That's their website, and essentially it's almost all but free. It's truly unlimited data.
$29 American or something.
Well,
yeah,
then it's not free. That's the whole point.
Right. Well, essentially, it just doesn't have. It gives like cell phone connectivity. It's got basically there are broadband services that go with it, and you can get free wired cell phones on top of
My understanding is that this is mostly IP based, and that's why the price can be down so low. Kind of like Skype is. They're advertising it as near free, not free. It's about $29 a month, I guess, US dollars, compared to my smartphone currently. I'm paying just over $100 a month for it.
That's
so
right.
Here they're offering, now this is unlimited talk, text, data, everything, unlimited everything, kind of like what your companies like a Metro PCS or something offer, which are now like $50 or $60 a month US. This company, would it to be here, which it probably won't, is the equivalent of about $29 US. So as opposed to $100 a month, $29 is certainly near free.
But the difference, from what I understand from the article, from what I've read, is that unlike the similar services, the boosts and the other prepaid or whatever you want to call them, the phones that Free FR are offering are fully functional for that price. You're not going to be getting a 1G phone for this price. You have a fully functional phone.
But everybody's getting away from that now. All of your carriers offer 3G and even 4G service now for $50 or $60 a month. So that's the norm now. The thing that's different about this is it's not using traditional cell phone towers. It's primarily an IP-based system, and it's going to have, or it does have, something they're calling micro somethings or whatever, like little repeater stations. So as opposed to full-blown cell towers, it's just going to have little repeater stations around, and I guess all to help keep the costs down. So in theory, I would buy into it. In theory, I would buy it. I would use the product. Is it going to happen here? No. Your AT&Ts and your Verizons are going to make sure it doesn't happen. Your AT&T and Verizons don't even like your companies like Metro PCS. I don't want to throw Boost into that because Boost is Sprint, who is currently the fourth largest carrier in the United States. But your Metro PCS, a little startup company, Metro PCS in the last quarter dropped significantly over the prior quarter or over the prior year. Again, because the service just isn't there, the network isn't built out, and people try it and then they don't like it and they move on to something else. So, even you get your Metro PCSs, for example, that are losing business, something like this, it's not going to happen. And you're unfortunately your Verizons and your AT&Ts and still your T-Mobile, since that merger went down the tubes, your T-Mobiles and even your Sprint, your number 4 carrier, are too large to let an IP protocol totally take over. Remember again, and then that'll be the end of my rant here, remember again that those major carriers do not even allow you, or allow you normally, in one case it might be AT&T allows it at an additional rate, they don't even allow you to make Skype calls over their network because you're bypassing their network and they're losing revenue. So you can't even make true IP calls over the United States traditional cell phones networks, because it's a loss to those companies. So they're not going to allow a company like this.
Ed, I understand what you're saying about these companies being big, and obviously, Apple and Google have been trying to do something similar to this for years to no effect, because these companies have fought them tooth and nail and made them sign agreements that even Google has found is very against its own motto, don't be evil, because they feel that these contracts are inherently rather evil. But I think the real issue with this, and Ed, you can even explain this better than me, but what my understanding of this is, one of the big problems we're already having in the United States is we just don't have the internet infrastructure that a lot of these other companies have, that have free Wi-Fi, that have unlimited broadband. Our country actually just didn't prepare for it, and it would cost millions of billions of dollars to make it.
It's multi-layered. Number one, we're on two different systems here, CDMA and GSM. GSM is the worldwide standard. The guest that we had on a couple weeks ago, Kate Hutchinson, who works for United Domains in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We'll give them a little plug again. Kate had mentioned how, for her business, she travels overseas a lot, and she can't use Verizon. She had to go with AT&T because they're GSM. The only other GSM carrier in the United States is T-Mobile. So we have these two different competing platforms, CDMA and GSM. So that's a major problem in itself. The second major problem is, for lack of a better word, just to keep it simplified for people, bandwidth. Everybody knows that word. There just isn't enough bandwidth. It's technically called spectrum. I might as well throw that out. And part of the reason that AT&T wanted to acquire T-Mobile was AT&T needs more spectrum or bandwidth, and by to grow out their 4G network. So by acquiring T-Mobile, who was already another GSM carrier, same infrastructure, bottom line, they would acquire more bandwidth or spectrum. It didn't work out that way. So yes, Holly, you're absolutely right. The bandwidth/spectrum just isn't there, and it's a problem. As a matter of fact, jumping ahead, mentioned Boost Mobile, brings me back to the old company that Sprint bought, Nextel. The old 800 megahertz IDEN technology that was Nextel, that system is finally being shut down in 2012 now, and that spectrum is going to be reassigned for other uses, because it was an old-fashioned technology, and okay, so now you could free up that bandwidth to something else. So there you go. We're all over the place, but I just wanted to try to explain it to everybody. Bottom line is that's the problem, a lack of spectrum/bandwidth.
When my mother used to get it, she would go over. She has T-Mobile, and part of her thing about our cell phone system is that she can sit in her house in New Jersey and have a lousy signal, and she can go to a small town in Italy and have 4 bars on her U.S. phone and make phone calls.
Well, in that case, that's T-Mobile. T-Mobile just didn't have a cell site close to her house, which there's a gazillion reasons for that. Schools, hospitals, so on and so forth don't want cell sites right in their neighborhood because they're still afraid of radiation.
But that's my point, that overseas you have cell towers everywhere.
Right.
Cell towers all over.
Well, I don't know if that's good or bad, because I don't know what side of the fence I'm on with the radiation issue. I don't know that we're going to know for 20 to 50 years down the road yet what these cell phones are actually doing to people. So maybe we don't need a cell tower every half a block. Maybe we should have a cell tower every mile until we really do know a number of years down the road what the radiation issues might potentially be. Play it safe.
Ed, are you ever afraid that, like, with this bandwidth issue and with the cell tower issue, like, are we getting behind the rest of the world technologically?
We're way behind the rest of the world.
We're way behind.
We're way behind China. China, for instance, any cell phone technology, since we're speaking of cell phone technology that we're using now, they had in China at least 5 years ago. They're using handsets, let's talk specifically hardware. They're using handsets in China right now that we won't see in the U.S. for at least 5 years. So we're already way behind the 8 ball. Talking about bandwidth, talking about speeds, talk about internet bandwidth or download speeds and upload speeds. The United States ranks down in the 20s or something as far as fastest internet speed in the world. We have very slow upload and download time compared to other countries.
Yeah, no, that freaks me out. That's my big fear. I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and move us on because we've totally.
Yeah, this isn't a tech show. Go ahead and listen to Leo Laporte's Twit Network if you really want to be up to date on technology.
Absolutely. We do have one more tech story.
Oh, Ed, before we go on it, if you're gonna, why don't we give his Leo's website address too?
It's all you need. Just Google Twit. He's all over the place. Twit.tv.
And so moving on to our last piece of tech news, obviously, we were speaking of Google a little bit before. They're planning to further integrate Google Plus into Google Search. And this has become a big issue in the tech world right now because it seems like Google is sort of trying to take over as this massive internet giant, which if anybody didn't see that happening already, I really have to question if you've ever used the internet. But I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
It's not a problem for me. In a nutshell, it's the same reference that you used for cameras, and I think after 20 years or so now of internet use in this country, where were we, the mid-90s, so coming up on 20 years of people using internet here, don't ever post online what you don't want somebody to read, see, hear sometime in the future. Anything you post never goes away. As a matter of fact, our predecessor company was called Desert Sun Studios. I was just looking the other day at some online video archives just by doing searches. I found articles, websites, our old Desert Sun Studio website and everything still online that's been dead for a number of years now, but it's still there, along with articles and quotes and references and links and everything. That company was started in 2003, so we're coming up on 10 years ago. That information from 10 years ago is still available online. So, bottom line, so I don't turn this into another rant, is just don't post anything that you don't want people to see in the future, because it never goes away. So as it relates to searches, you can find anything you want already online by integrating the Google Plus platform into the traditional Google search.
Why
wouldn't
doing
they
do
different.
that? That's what they're in business for. This is what their job is. I'm surprised it took them this long to do it.
Yeah, and don't tell me that Bing with Microsoft is any different. Bing integrates everything into it as well.
I mean, it's just because it's Google doing it. It's people like companies like Facebook are worried about them getting to social media. Well, you know something? These guys should be worried. I mean, Google is doing this very slowly, where everybody else does it fast. I'm surprised this wasn't done months ago when Google Plus first came out. I'm surprised that this wasn't done a long time ago, especially with guys like Google when they're trying to capture the market and take over the market, which is what their job is down. I mean, the CEO of Google isn't sitting there saying, well, let's let Facebook do this or let's let Microsoft do this with Bing. These guys are trying to be the leaders in technology.
Yeah, and I'm not a fan of Facebook, but they all do it. So again, I'm also not a hypocrite. If Facebook does it, then let Microsoft do it, then let Google do it. Again, as the White House said, they want a free and open internet. Well, then there's your free and open internet. You can't say that if somebody posts something online, it shouldn't be searchable. Yes, it should be searchable as long as it's on the interwebs.
Well, and I think, the way you describe the internet almost sounds like getting a tattoo. I always say I won't get a tattoo because I don't know if I'm going to want that on my body forever. And you post something online, it's on there forever. And so you're always sort of cautious about what sort of pictures and things you have.
It truly is, though. That's the problem. And people don't realize that.
Oh, it scares me to death, actually. I know that there are privacy settings that you can set, and I think that people need to become familiar with those, but it's hard to keep up. But I think one of the reasons that Google's moved really slowly with this is Google constantly has a microscope on them, not just because of their competitors trying to hold ground, but also if you look at, any company that takes something as bold as "Do No Evil," as their theme song, is going to be held to a higher standard than other companies. It just is. It's just like if you're a Christian minister and you cheat on your wife with a man, people are going to be a lot harder on you than a gay guy who's openly gay and doesn't have any problems with who he is. It's a different thing. It's if you're going to take yeah, well, I mean, I think it's bold. I love Google. I think it's bold what they do as a company, and I like what they're doing. But I think that the problem is if you take a stance of righteousness, then every move you make, you have to put under several different microscopes, and it's hard to get it right, especially where business is concerned, because the job of a business is to make profit. As you said, Fred, I mean, they've got to do what they've got to do to make a bigger profit, to become a bigger company. If you're not growing, you're dying.
And while we're speaking of Google, it just reminds me it's time to give a little plug for ourselves here for BaseNet TV. Yes, as you've probably seen online, we are now going by the moniker BaseNet TV. We've shortened our name just a tad to keep it a little simpler. And along with that, you could find us at another website, another URL. All of our old ones are still valid. You could find us any place you've ever found us in the past. However, we are now also using basenettv.com. So hopefully that's a little easier for everybody to remember. Our company is BaseNet TV, or our network is. Our network is BaseNet TV, and our website is basenettv.com. Also, you could email us right here at As We See It with your comments and suggestions for this show at this show's new email address, which is AWSI. I think you could figure out what that stands for. AWSI at basenettv.com. So go ahead and email your comments and suggestions to AWSI at basenettv.com. You could find us at basenettv.com, and on your social media sites. On Facebook, we're BaseNet. On Google+, we are BaseNet TV. And on Twitter, we are BaseNet TV. Same. See? We're starting to standardize. I can see a pattern there. So, that's it. Also, most importantly, we are still looking for money. Here's our little PBS section, our little public access television deal here. We should have a little sound of the phone banks in the background of the phones ringing off the hook. Only that's the problem. Our phones aren't ringing off the hook. We appreciate any kind of help that anybody could give us to keep all of our programming on the air. We're not making a dime off of this, but yet there's equipment and bandwidth and everything that needs to be paid for. On our website, basenettv.com, you'll see a Google checkout link, which, as a matter of fact, they've just merged their little things together, and they're now going to be going under the name Google Wallet. But you can go to Google Checkout, or Google Wallet, as they're going to be calling it now, and you can make a one-time only donation for as little as $1 to BaseNet. So please, anywhere from $1 on up, we appreciate anything you could give us. If all of our listeners, heck, if half of our listeners were to give us just even $1, we would have more than enough money to help us pay for our bandwidth and all of the different costs that we have. So that would be highly recommended. So that could be done at basenettv.com. Thank you very much for your support.
Yes, please support us. Give us money for more programming, more fun exposure, and a way to, find us on other formats. It only makes it easier for you to make it easier for us to do this. So please, any change spared, we appreciate. I guess let's move into our last international story.
Okay, the United States said yesterday on Saturday that we would be offering Bangladesh close to $1 billion in aid over the next 5 years. They said the money would go towards alleviating poverty, malnutrition, as well as family planning and a fight against infectious diseases. The funds would also be used to support research in improving farm productivity and deal with the impact of climate change. As of 2011, the United States government provided over $5.7 billion in development assistance to Bangladesh. Now, those of you who don't know where Bangladesh is, it's a country that used to be known as East Pakistan up until the 1970s. Now, I personally don't have a problem with this except for one thing. it's that 40 years ago, and this is something that people can attest, that those of you who know anything about this, 40 years ago they did something very, very similar to this. In 1971, George Harrison was involved in called the Concert for Bangladesh, which was done with Ravi Shankar, people like Leon Russell, and they got, and it was done with the name of UNICEF, and 40 years later they still have the same problem. So where's the money going? That's my big question, is that you had concerts for 40 years. We pumped $5.7 billion into this country, and nothing has changed.
Well, on a much more recent note, that same exact situation is going on with Haiti. Just past the 2-year anniversary of the Haiti earthquake, and the gazillions of dollars that were earmarked for Haiti, very small portion of it made it there.
And that's part of the problem. And I don't have a problem with people with giving money to a country like Bangladesh. I mean, these people are dirt poor. I mean, they don't eat for days at a time. But I'm going to read an article here that comes out of Wikipedia, for those people who don't know, is that the Concert of Bangladesh was the name of a 2 benefit concerts organized by George Harrison and Ravi Shankar, held at noon and 7 p.m. on August 1st, 1971, playing it to a total of 40,000 people at Madison Square Garden, New York. The concert was organized to fund relief efforts for refugees from East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, following the 1970 Ebola cyclone and atrocities during the Bangladesh Liberation War. The event was the first ever billed concert of such a magnitude. It featured a supergroup of performers who included Ravi Shankar, Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, George Harrison, Billy Preston, Leon Russell, Badfinger, and Ringo Starr. I mean, this is something they brought in over $200,000 in one day. That's a lot of money. Even the 1971 dollars, it's a lot of money. But now, the article I just told you guys about said we brought in $5.7 billion. We're planning another $2 billion, and these people are still dirt poor. Why is somebody not using this money for technology to get these people the actual help and assistance that can be done?
Well, I'm all for, I actually am not asking the question of where did this money go, because listen, if another country was supporting us, I guarantee you we'd burn through that money like wildfire. But my question is more along the lines of, we're in the middle of a huge global recession. And while I do believe you need to take care of each other, I'm asking the question more like, we're trying to find money to keep our country running here. The government almost shut down a couple months ago. I was really proud of Obama from bringing our troops home from Iraq, because I felt like, hey, that's money we need. So my question is more along the lines of, we're borrowing money from countries who are borrowing money, and then they're borrowing money from us. Where does the borrowing stop?
And take care of our own people. The other day, as happens in any city, just insert the name of your city here, but the other day I was walking through Boston, and literally every 25 to 50 feet, there's another homeless person sitting on the sidewalk begging for money. And, or they come up to you and, hey, buddy, you got a nickel, you got $1, you got $5, could you buy me a coffee, could you buy me that? Well, you know what? There's literally so many of them that by the time I would have walked a quarter of a mile, I would have been out $50 if I gave everybody even just $1 a piece. There's that many of them. Take care of our own people first.
And part of what I have a problem with is that, we're not regulating. If we're going to give these people $1 billion, okay, but we need to regulate where that money goes. That brings out the back in the 1970s, something they used to call a Russian wheat deal. We wouldn't sell wheat to the Russians because we didn't believe in their communist regime, so we sold the wheat to France, who sold it to the Russians at a profit. So here we're talking about, like Holly said, being a free society, wanting to help everybody, but we're sitting there making deals with countries where we're going to sell. If we sell this stuff to Bangladesh, is there a government now that, I'm going to tell you right now, has got to be corrupted. The money's going somewhere. They're going to turn around and sell it to somebody else to make a profit because their leader is not dirt poor. Their leader is living in a palace someplace while the people are still eating dirt.
I wish I could say that weren't true, but the truth of the matter is a lot of the countries that we've tried to give aid to before this has been a problem with. And, I hope that's not the case, but deep down I just think you're right. I think there's a certain amount of money right now. The world at large needs to figure out what we're doing about the global crisis before any of us start giving and borrowing money again. I think we need to regulate somehow. And I don't know.
You know, and there's a little clip of George Bush from the George Bush and Bill Clinton Foundation for Haiti, where George Bush says, "Don't you know? I know that people want to send blankets and all of this stuff, water and blankets and all of that, but don't send that. Just send cash."
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash.
Well, sure, because blankets and water and everything actually have to go to people. Cash could go anywhere. Not insinuating that George Bush and Bill Clinton did anything with that cash inappropriately, but my point is blankets and water would have went to people. Cash could be laundered anywhere.
Also, cash goes to the companies that are going to be overcharging for the goods and services that are being taken. We send blankets and water on our own. We know what we're getting for our dollar. Because I have a problem with sending, and take any company. I've seen people send stuff directly under relief, and you see billions of dollars worth of stuff coming off the C-130 aircraft in Haiti, which was supplied by people that sent that through the mail to get to these people. And yet you don't see this coming through. I mean, if I'm given $1, I want to know at least 90 cents of that dollar is going someplace. That where I want it to go. And that's my dollar. I should be able to tell them where it goes. Never mind anything else.
Well, and the interesting thing is this is why I take the larger stance of, hey, we need to deal with, you gotta put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on the child sitting next to you. And we need an oxygen mask right now as America. And yeah, I'd love to ask these bigger scale questions of how to, because giving aid to people takes cost, and it's difficult to quantify, that cost from this far down the chain. And I do think that regulation needs to happen, but I still stick with the idea that you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. We need that money. We need to figure out what we're doing here as a country to actually get out of this recession, not just spending on credit more. I want us fixed before we start fixing other people. And I don't believe that's happened yet.
Very good.
So, well, I think we're running out of time. I actually have to go soon to get ready, even though we gave ourselves an extra hour this week.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh yeah.
So if that's about it, is that all we have, everybody?
I'm all done.
All right. So then from Boston, Massachusetts, for show 26 of As We See It on January 15, 2012, I'm Ed Jupin.
From Swiftwater, Pennsylvania, in the Pocono Mountains, I'm Fred Boas.
From St. Louis, Missouri, I'm Holly Hurley.
And from Brookline, Massachusetts, I'm the Lobster.
We'll see you next time.
Good night.